Top of the agenda, well, that is Jordan De Goey. He was a no-show at Collingwood today as the Magpies begin their round 15 preparations. With the sights of the 8, they pick up with every reason to believe that they can storm inside. But it's the off-field issues that dominated their day. It's unclear at this stage what or if there will be any penalty from the club toward its star. But what we did learn tonight was that the contract, a lucrative contract, which had been placed before De Goey, has been withdrawn across the weekend.
I think you always get a pretty good indication about someone's professionalism and how much they care about their careers when you look at the choices that they make. And Jordan De Goey and every player, they're entitled to go overseas if they want in the break, but it's a choice. And I think in this case, Jordan has chosen indulgence over discipline.
Good evening. AFL star Jordan De Goey faces new scrutiny over a mid-season trip to Bali.
Jordan De Goey's future at Collingwood hangs in the balance tonight.
Once again, Collingwood are on the front page of the paper for 2 days in a row, and they look foolish as a result of one of their players.
That's entitled behaviour that's not acceptable in any way, shape or form. You know, the public grabbing of someone's top in a public environment such as that, that's the entitled behaviour that has to be stamped out.
I don't think it was a good decision to go to Bali. I know that the club have been criticised for that, but you don't hold your players' hands like they're preschool kids.
I think it's nearly at a point, if it wasn't last time, you're either in or you're out. And you need to change behaviours because it impacts the football club.
When you want to get them in there to get you over the hump and win a premiership, you want blokes that are smart and got common sense. So we know he can play football, but some of the decisions are questionable he does make outside of the footy field.
It was all eyes to Collingwood today, where De Goey was not there, and there were no developments on what happens next, which we'll discuss. But what we did learn when Mick Gleeson posted his story late in the day was that the 2-year contract offer with the trigger for 2 more years at about $800,000 was withdrawn across the course of the weekend.
Yeah, it's a good story by Michael Gleeson, and people are waiting for a response from Collingwood. We all are. We're waiting to hear from Jordan De Goey. We've read a small statement from him. So Collingwood have made moves to take his contract off the table. Now, people can say, oh, God, they're going to sack him. I don't think they're going to sack Jordan De Goey. But I got the impression, we've had Craig McRae on a couple of times, I got the impression that it was close, the contract. And maybe they've agreed to it. Maybe they have. We can't announce this at this time.
Well, I don't think from a legal perspective for your own business, I think you have to remove it in those circumstances while you figure out what happened and what the resolution is going to be. I don't think you can probably leave that contract there to be signed at any moment.
Yeah. This story is really complex. We've got a lot of the community standards and people saying he did nothing wrong. You got media commentators, and I've been included, I call him the dumbest player of his generation. Now, his parents might be thinking, who are you to say that? His friends might be saying, who are you to say that? I'm looking at a guy who has enormous football talent, who keeps finding controversy. Now, if it's a once-off, you say, hey, mate. All through his career, he just finds controversy. And some of it's his own doing, some of it's circumstance. This one might be circumstances. But the point is, it's an accumulation, Jared, of events in Jordan's life. And he's got to get to a stage where he say, hey, pal, can you get it through your head that there's going to be some big decisions being made on you if you continue to make us, the Collingwood Football Club and the players, answer you because of your behaviour. We're sick of it. Let us play football. We've got a lot of good going here. You go to Bali, and I agree with Nathan Buckley, be responsible for your own. Now, the next argument, jump in whenever you want to go in. The next argument, what did he do wrong? What did he do wrong? If the woman involved said, I didn't like you pulling down my breast, Jordan De Goey's career might be at the crossroads, as a few of the boys said. That the woman has said that it's not an issue for her, that places him in a pretty OK position. Because if she's not offended, other people can be offended, but the club will say, well, that's OK, you be offended, but this woman's not. And that's the main person in this situation. But it doesn't excuse the fact that Jordan, once again, has put himself in a position where the club has to be answerable to his behaviour. And that must be very, very tedious for that football club.
So there's a couple of challenges for Collingwood which are really obvious. The first is, and only they know, what parameters did they put in place around De Goey at the start of the year that saw him return to the fold and be able to continue on without missing a game of football, and has he breached any of those parameters? The second is, just go and watch Jeremy Howe today be harangued by the news crews and ask yourself, so a teammate has left him in that position. So what impact does that have on your cohesion as a group and the shared sense of mission and what they have given themselves a chance to do by winning the last 4 games? And then he jeopardises that through his indulgence off the field.
Yeah, it's a really good point you make, because all of us in the media, and people say it's a witch hunt on De Goey. Is it? I've had a lot of people ring me up and say, no, you're wrong. You're going too hard on him. He's done nothing wrong. Right, forget what I think or what you think or what everyone thinks. What does Collingwood think?
Yeah.
That's all it comes down to, and we know what the AFL thinks. The AFL, they're like the gunslinger standing in the corner of the saloon saying, righto, what's going to happen here? What are you going to do, Collingwood? Because they're not happy, mate. They don't want a mid-season break and be on the front page of every newspaper, Jordan De Goey again. So the AFL are waiting. So what does Collingwood do? I don't think Collingwood will suspend
I'm probably
Jordan De Goey.
in that camp too.
I don't think they will. Now, they can either cut him and let him go at the end of the year, and we'll talk about that in a second, or they can sit him down and say to him for the nth time, do you understand life? Do you understand where you are placed in life? And if he says, I don't care, well, don't play for Collingwood anymore. Go. You've got to care. Because look at Jeremy Howe. Look at Craig McRae when he has to do a press conference next. When? Tomorrow? Look at Jeff Brown, the new president. They've got this club from a bottom of the table last year, sacked their coach, got a new coach in. Everything's going absolutely fabulous, absolutely fabulous. And we get to the mid-season break and Jeff Brown's sitting, God, I've got to deal with the Jordan De Goey incident again. That wears you down, mate.
Yeah.
Do you know that Carlton sacked Brendan Favola, right? Because of accumulation of events. Not one, but we've had enough of dealing with the affair. Go. And there's going to be a stage. I don't know if it's his last chance or not, Jared. I wouldn't have a clue. But if it's not his last chance this time, I'd lay $1,000 it's his last chance next time.
Yeah, so for mine at the moment, he remains Collingwood's asset, Collingwood's problem, and Collingwood's responsibility still. So I think the removal of the contract isn't we're not going to offer him a contract. I think this is a mechanism of the time. I suspect he gets offered a contract and it will be a little bit less than might have been on the table last week.
Can I ask you a question on the morality of his behaviour? Do you think tugging at the girl's top in a Bali club bar, well, I've been to them, Jared, they can get loose. Do you think Collingwood has a responsibility for all women, even though that woman say, there was not an issue? Where does Collingwood sit with that, bearing in mind they do better report, they're trying to change culture? Of all the cultures that they're trying to change, where does this sit with Collingwood?
Yeah, I would think that part of the parameters around De Goey after what happened at the start of the year was around respect for women, and publicly so. And you would have to be in those meetings, I think, to have the full grasp of that, which is why what we will learn in the aftermath will be critical. So De Goey's position is absolute. He didn't give Collingwood much room to move once he put his persecution statement out.
No, he didn't.
Like that is an absolute.
Who advised him on that? Because the club, what I've read, the club didn't know.
Jordan doesn't want his behaviour challenged, and that's clearly his circle, and those who have challenged him in the past have been removed from that circle. So he is an indulged figure, which is part of the Collingwood conversation, I think, after this. But having spoken to peers and having spoken to contemporaries, the idea that Jordan, on behalf of all professional sports people and AFL players,
It was laughable.
has made the case for persecution. That doesn't wash. That doesn't wash with any of his peers. I wouldn't think that washes within the four walls, and would be a really interesting conversation when that time comes.
Put a headline out, Jared. Don't play the mental health card, Jordan. And I just want to say one last thing. It's a really complex life for footballers. 2 weeks ago, Bailey Smith gets caught with a bag of cocaine. Cocaine's really bad. You know, people die around the world. There's a big... we've got to stop the drug scourge, and he gets 2 weeks suspension. Jordan De Goey gets more publicity than probably Bailey Smith. What's the AFL going to suspend him, not suspend him? You know, 2 people fight in the street. I think we've spoken about this morning. May and Melksham, violence outside a popular Melbourne restaurant. Melksham's defending himself. He smacks Stephen May. The AFL, in that situation, we won't suspend you, even though there's violence. Now, what is the AFL? Are they going to come over the top and say, no, you have to suspend Jordan To Go? It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
And it's so many layers to footy.
The fact that it's not resolved today tells you there are tension points all over the place inside of it. And I also think the idea, so what's running well ahead of time is the idea that he's still a prize recruit elsewhere. So I'm happy to say he is unrecruitable at top dollar elsewhere. You live long enough to see the same story over and over. Brendan Favola's recruitment to the Brisbane Lions is, I lived that story, is you can't be, with a straight face, going to your senior leadership group saying, hey, we're going to bring him in at $900,000 to $1 million.
That's going to be tough.
Shall we do that?
That's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. I fully expect him to stay at Collingwood.
Yep.
But you know what, Jordan, and you may not care. You may not care, and he might not even listen and care what I'm going to say here. It's the last thing I'm going to say. Jordan, if you don't care about yourself and what everyone thinks of you, that's fine. Care about what your teammates and your football club care about. They care about you. All they want is a little care back. And now you do it at times where Craig McRae sat here and said, you know what, I'll go walking with Jordan. And I'm picturing the coach and his star player walking along, having life conversations. The penny will drop. Great, look at the football you're playing. And then this happens. You know, when does it get into his head that life can't be about you, Jordan? Your life can't be about you. And I'll tell you what, if you weren't playing football, you'd probably be sacked. So actually, football is saving you, and you're pissing it in the face of your teammates and your club. That's all. The penny's got to drop, mate.
We'll pick this conversation up when more is known tomorrow night, I'm sure.